further ado, Dr. Joe Marshalla.
Well, good evening, everybody. And hello. Hello, class. Good morning, class. Wow, well, there's a lot of new faces here. Completely different crowd than last week, and which is just great. And for those of you who missed last week, I said, but last month, I guess it was, I'm going to attempt not to cover the material that was in the last mind control lecture. There'll be some crossover, and stuff that I'll have to, touch on and probably give you a quick review on that information so that you can understand where I am and where I'm going. But in the event that you want to kind of catch up to the previous lecture and what was said and what we discussed there, you can see it in pretty high quality at Dr. Joe's video. Dr. Joe's video. And if you go to my website, joemarshalla.com, you go to multimedia, and at the bottom, the lecture, and it has mind control. So you can either get to there, but that'll direct you to Dr. Joe's video. We've had just over 3,500 people watch it since last month. And apparently word is getting out. What's really happening. So, happy anniversary. It is 1 week from one of the biggest mind control exercises that has ever been perpetrated on the human race. And, and happy days are here again. Boy, look at gas prices, huh? Woo! Yeah, only $2 now. It's just like, come on. If those of you, are any of you familiar with Patrick Timpone? And, on his show on Wednesday nights, Andrew Goss is a award-winning economist that he lectures on really what's happening behind the scenes with all of this money that supposedly we're giving to people that is being stolen, basically. But oneradionetwork.com, Tuesday or Wednesday nights, and he has Andrew Goss on there. And listen to the archives if you really want to see what's going on and who's really, paying who off and what's going on there. It's really well done, and it's all public knowledge. I mean, he just takes it from public areas that if you know where to look, you can get the information. And it's just absolutely brilliant stuff. So, I guess I'll have to give a little brief history about me so that you can see where I'm coming from and really why I do what it is I do. And my whole quest to kind of understand life all began at the age of 13 when I got hit by a car and had a out-of-body experience. And I had an experience that no one could explain. And I went to my priest at my Catholic church, and he was like, oh, you couldn't have had that. It's only through us that you can connect with God or whatever. And it was very frustrating. It was very frustrating. It was about 6 years of just really deep confusion. I finally got to the University of Illinois, where I went to college, and met someone who turned me on to the Tibetan Book of the Dead and various other kind of texts like that began to then give me a perspective. But it still didn't quite explain the things that, I experienced. So subsequently, there was another death experience where I drowned off Maui, and then those were both near-death experiences. But then 6 years ago, I had a fatal heart attack, and this genetic valve closed off, and I was pronounced dead and was gone for over 10 minutes. And then sheets over my head, and then I pop up, aha, I'm back, and there's a whole bunch of things that happened as a result of that, and I have actually literally changed my cellular structure. I had 1/3 of my heart that was permanently dead, and now I have the heart of a 16-year-old, and there's a whole bunch of different things that I applied through using my own mind that now I'm a medical anomaly. And they look at the pictures of my old heart and my new heart, and they're like, wow, we don't know what happened. And I'm just tapping, oh, good job, guys, good job, and I don't even try to go there with them. But anyways, as a result of that last experience, though, I had a period of time, almost 3 weeks, where I could go in and out at will. I could be here, I could go out, go be here, go out, and what have you, form, formless, form, formless. And I was given, and I played with it. I mean, this was like the ultimate playground, It's just like, whoa! And it got to the point where I was so good at being able to go in and out that I could actually stop at the various what I call touch points of where we begin to interface with this physical plane reality. And I created the spectrum, and it's all taught in my workshops and stuff like that. It's not covered in this particular book that I wrote, but there's a new one coming out. But anyways, my point is that I began to realize really what the mind is, and what the mind does, and what are the various aspects of the mind that help us to organize this thing that we call reality. So we talk about mind control. And we can go back, and so many of us have heard of it, and we've seen it, and we know about, subliminal advertising, we know about MK Ultra, we know about all these different experiments by the KGB, we know about Freud's principles being applied to us back in the early 1900s, where then they created, quote unquote, the consumer, because consumers never existed before, right? We were manufacturing goods in order to facilitate the needs, and they realized that they only had about 10 more years before everyone's needs were taken care of. So that we've got to figure out, we're going to plateau and we're not going to be able to make any goods. What are we going to do? How are we going to keep on making money? And so they brought in Freud's nephew, Edwin Bernays, excuse me, yeah. And basically through stimulating some of our primordial parts of our brain that are beyond our cognition, beyond our control, began creating need and want and desire in people, so as to have them want more than what they need, but to desire what they don't need. And as a result, they could create the consumer. As a result, then they could begin to build things that had planned obsolescence. So in other words, they'd break down after 5 years so that they could keep this ball rolling. Okay, so we go even further back than that, and we go back into the Catholic Church and the mind control that has been used there, and specifically the Gregorian calendar. The calendar that we have today, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 2008, right? Supposedly. That was an imposed structure to disconnect civilizations from their intuitive connection to time and space and reality and the environment. That you had entire populations, entire civilizations that were very in tune with the cycles of the sun, the moon, the weather, the patterns of the seasons, and all this other kind of stuff. And they had something called intuition. They had an intuitive nature where somehow there was a knowing, right? They had a connection, if you will. And that connection needed to be severed. Because when people have that connection and they are empowered that way, no one can impose on you their will. So what we did is we decided, or we, yeah, well, this is part of we, but, the part of we that was them, created this calendar and began to then impose that calendar on civilizations. And tens of millions, almost hundreds of millions of people were killed who didn't want to participate with that calendar. And then we go to the witch hunts, and we can go farther back than that to the whip, and then the Egyptians, and it just goes on and on and on. But we, so we're aware that mind control is there. But then, for myself, in my own inquiry about life and my mind, and really what all this kind of stuff was, I was like, okay, well, mind control. What is this thing, the mind, that is being controlled? What is that? Where is that? Supposedly there's all these forces that are causing me to be a certain way, but what are the mechanisms that are at play? And so in order to really understand mind control, the angle that I come at is to really understand what the mind is. And once we understand what the mind is and how it works and what the various functions are, the various parts of the mind, we can then begin to have a relationship with the things that are on automatic pilot, and then the influences that are causing us to make certain choices and to act in certain ways. I feel like a caged rat. I'm usually walking along this big stage like this, and I've got the cameras, and I've got and it's just, so I'll use my arms, see, I'm not Italian either. His name was made up. I'm Czechoslovakian, so just say, the original hippies, the Bohemians, My hair used to be down to here. I'll tell you a real quick little joke. And I used to coach in the corporate world, right? And it was always just kind of funny because I had, I'd have on my Armani, but still I had this long ponytail down to here and what have you. And after I'd be there for 3 or 4 days working on, team building or motivation or whatever it was we were working on, soft training as they call it, right? And I'd get these, these old codgers coming up to me and saying, you're the first hippie that I got respect for, mostly you smell and, but you got smarts, and stuff like that. It was so funny. So here I was. So then, years later, so here I am, finally the hippie made it into the corporate world, kind of. And so then years afterwards, like 1995, I finally cut it all off. It was just a long story, but I cut it all off. And it wasn't almost like 10 years later. I used to live on Maui. About 10 years later, I went back to Maui. And now I'm hanging out with all my new kind of hippie brethren, right? The burners and the piercings and the dreads and all that kind of stuff. And we're in drum circles and we're going at it and what have you. And then a few days later, after I'm on Maui, finally one person kind of, I get word back that, hey, the straight guy's pretty cool, right? And it's like, it's not about the package, So, that was a totally useless story, but it was fun. So the human mind. Most of us are in here today, I believe. Those of us who are sitting in here, because we really want to grow beyond this sense of, I don't want to even call it a sense of betrayal. We know we've been lied to. We know we've been manipulated. We know the things that are happening out there are not right. And we have this sense, this feeling, this thing that drives us to seek the truth. Some truth, anything, some enlightenment, some light on the subject so that then we can get our heads around it so that we don't feel like quote-unquote victims. And it is the very essence of that desire, the very essence of that quest that is growing and expanding in incredible leaps and bounds across the planet. I mean, I lecture all the time. 3 times a week I'm somewhere in the world lecturing, either on the phone, either doing teleconferences, traveling somewhere. And I am meeting thousands upon thousands upon thousands of us who are now wanting a change, now wanting the shift. And not just thinking about it, but actually taking their lives and making a difference. And so right now, literally, I know in my mind that there are literally millions of people on this planet right now that we are connecting with, who are having this conversation, having this desire. But that desire, that essence, what drives that? Because before you were 10 years of age, every feeling that you have, every feeling that you hold in your being, that you experience now today as adults, every single one of those feelings you had for the first time, and every single one of them happened before you were 10 years of age. By the time, they say actually 8, but I'm giving it to 10. By 10 years of age, every single feeling that you have had, you had before you were age 10, and then every time you've had it again has been a reoccurrence of that feeling. But you have no, quote-unquote, new feelings. Now the reason I bring that up is that we look at the sense of betrayal and we want to look at the current circumstances. We want to blame the current circumstances for that sense of betrayal. We want to look at the things that are really making us mad, that when we first woke up, when we began to really realize, whether it was from nuclear power to the fluoride in our water to whatever it was that was the topic, that was the one that finally got you to say, this is messed up. And then begin to work towards finding more and more of that information. The first time that happened was long, 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 long ago. And the reason I bring that up is because as long as we are focused on the current circumstances, the external circumstances, and attempting to move that stuff around and change it and shift it, we're not going to get to the core issue of what it is we're actually trying to change. So I speak about the mind. We're going to go into a little bit of the research that I know about the mind. We have this incredible thing, and this is going to be some review for those of you who were here last time. And this brain, this thing is this. We have this thing called self-talk. Okay, this little voice that's going on in your head, and you might say, well, what is he talking about? It's that voice that I'm specifically talking about. Now, that voice talks to itself all day, every day. You have 50,000 self-talks a day. Okay, 50,000 self-talks every single day. Now, I won't go into all of the details. Go watch the video to get all the story, or you can read it in my book or what have you. But essentially, I'm just going to give you an overview. Of those 50,000 self-talks a day, you actually interact with around 2,500 of them. Out of those 2,500 that you interact with, roughly 80%, or 2,000 of them, are negative or limiting in some way. This is no accident. Okay? It's no accident that 80% of your thoughts are negative or limiting in some way. There's a very specific purpose why that has occurred, and there's a very specific purpose as to how that is affecting all of humanity. Essentially, a 4-to-1 ratio like that, a 4-to-1 negative ratio, is considered PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So basically, our entire planet right now is living in post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I'm giving you a quick overview, so hang in there with me because I go into more detail on the other video and what have you. So essentially, we have all of these thoughts that are going on, and with all this stuff that's going on, and with all these negative thoughts, and these negative thoughts cause us to resign ourselves to something called learned helplessness. And this learned helplessness phenomena, as they found in research, is basically they took a little dog and they put this dog in a maze, shock its paws, it runs away, shock its paws, runs away, shock its paws, runs away. Then they put it in a harness, shock its paw, it tries, it can't, shock, try. Finally, the dog gives up. They shock it, it just stands there, passively receiving the stimuli. Shock, it just stands there. They take the harness off, shock its little paws, it just stands there. It's completely free to move. It's completely unharnessed. Before it used to do it, but it had gotten to the point where it had learned helplessness. And even though it was completely free, after they took the harness off, it just stood there as if it was still harnessed. So then, the last little bit of information that kind of ties into all of that, I'm giving a quick overview. This was almost 20 minutes, and I've given you it now in a minute and a half. The last part of it is that they were studying dreams. And I could go into all the details, but what they had found after the second dream research lab was that there was no difference, zero difference between what happens in our mind when we dream at night and what happens in our mind when we daydream in the day. Okay? So, in other words, when you're sitting there daydreaming, thinking about, I want to better my life, I want a better world, or I want to change my job, or I want this, or I want that, that there's no difference between what happens and how it serves your mind in the daytime than when you're sleeping at night and the same thing is occurring. Now, one of the things that happened in the early dream research that they were doing was that they were trying to study the dreamless mind. Okay? And the way they were doing that was that, when you begin to dream, you have REMs, right? And the rapid eye movement begins and what have you. So that rapid eye movement, they had the subjects in the lab, and they're laying there on the lab, and every time their eyes would begin to dart back and forth and they'd start to dream, they'd wake them up, or they'd disturb them so that they'd stop the dream. And so there they were in the research lab, sleep, REM, wake up, sleep, interrupt, sleep, blah, 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 blah. And after 3 days, they canceled the research, considered it unethical, announced to the world, never do research like this again, because everyone who was not allowed to dream in that dream research lab became very irritable, became suicidal, angry, violent people. And it took many years of therapy to reverse just that 3-day experience in those subjects. So we talked about this rapid mind, that's all these negative thoughts. We've talked about this learned helplessness, and we talked about how there's no difference between dreaming. And when you're not allowed to dream, basically go insane. And the reason I bring those three pieces of information up is because is there anything that, if you put all of those together in a particular sequence, those three concepts, what happens is that you begin to realize that you want to dream a better life, you want a better world, you want to, change something in your reality, yet you're continuously being woken up, saying, oh, that's not real, you can't do that, by all these negative thoughts that are being thrown at you, and then you find yourself in a state of learned helplessness. And you eventually don't even try. Because what's the point? So one of the ways that we are going to look at mind control today is that I'm going to be pushing against the programs that are running inside each one of your brains. I'm going to be testing the limits of what it is you're able to receive and begin to massage kind of a new perspective, if you will. If you're uncomfortable with the things that I'm saying, it's not me, it's your uncomfortableness. I have no control over that. I'm just sitting there. These are just vibrations coming out of this head. Then those vibrations are traveling through time and space and being picked up by these receivers, which then are being interpreted inside this thing. Whatever your particular neuro makeup is and biochemistry is, you're going to respond to these vibrations differently. I have no control over that. But I will tell you that how you are receiving whatever is coming out of here has been shaped. And has been shaped, your parents have been shaped, their parents have been shaped, and it's been going on for a long time. Okay? So, the human mind. What is it? What's an idea? What's a thought? What's a belief? And where do these things exist? Now, I happen to subscribe to a particular philosophy. I call myself a wholosopher. If anyone's ever wondering, what you call yourself, my degree is in philosophy. But I call myself a wholosopher. And what that entails, basically, is that for myself, and what works for me, is that it is absolutely critical for my being to incorporate every aspect of everything that has ever happened to me, every aspect of everything that is on the planet, everything that I could possibly do to integrate all the parts of myself into one holistic being. So I'm not in denial about any aspect. Can I be an asshole? Yeah, I can be an asshole. Can I be a beautiful, loving guy? Yeah, I can be a beautiful, loving guy. Can I be ignorant? Absolutely. Whatever trait that you could be, I accept. Yeah, I am that way sometimes. I think we all are. But then also to begin integrating what science has shown me through quantum physics, what science has shown me through neurology, what science has shown me through biology, biochemistry, through all the sciences, and begin pulling all of those together into a big picture as to what it is and who it is I am. So one of the things that I usually start off my lectures, and I didn't start it off this time with, but I'm going to put this in there today because this is a big part of mind control. And I'll tap on it real quick. But I mean, how many people came here to learn something new today? Okay. And how many of you would like me to teach you something new today? Okay. And what if I were to tell you that it is literally, physically, neurologically, biochemically, it is absolutely impossible for me to teach you anything. And my joke is it gets me off the hook, right? Right? Because the truth is that we all have been our own teachers. Someone may have shown us something, but it was your application of that information that led you to learn it and actually teach yourself. Now, our modern educational system doesn't convey that to us. It separates us from knowledge. And you need this person or this being or something to teach you. And I'm here today to tell you that your entire life you've been teaching yourself. Who taught you how to tie your shoes? Who taught you how to eat? Who taught you how to walk? Who taught you how to ride a bike? Who taught you? You did. by doing it over and over and over again until you got good enough at it that, hey, look, I can do it. Who taught you 2 plus 2? Actually, someone may have shown you it, but it was your personal application of that activity that created the synaptic pathways in your mind that gave you the opportunity to understand that concept. So I encourage you from this moment forward to hold that realization in the forefront of your mind that every day, every moment you can learn something new. And you are your own teacher. There's no subject that you need to go to a university to learn about. There's no degrees that you have to have. You don't have to do all that stuff. Keep it clean for the video. And that's so important. Because so often, like, we'll go somewhere wanting someone or something to teach us. Something to, like good old Barack, he's gonna help save the world, and we externalize that someone else is gonna do it. No one else is gonna do it. I mean, I myself believe it's not too late to change our world. Okay? I hold that to be true. It's not too late, to turn it all around. I can feel that change, right? And we all can feel the change. But you and I, we are the change. Evolution is not something that's going to happen. Evolution is happening. Your sitting in this room is evolution. Every moment is the evolutionary process. What got me my PhD was the discovery of, or the description thereof, in the laws of physics and psychology and philosophy, was a description of the here now, the present moment that no one had ever done before. And for me, I was just sitting there one day contemplating it, and I came up with this word, repeatlessness. And I wrote it down and handed it in and got a PhD. Woo, I'm making it light and easy because but the point is that there's no two moments, there's no two experiences, there's no two anything that are ever the same. Every nanosecond, every trillionth of a second, every atom, every particle, every aspect of this perceivable and unperceivable reality is changing, growing. It's either shedding energy or taking energy on. It is in constant transformation. Life is, in and of itself, a state of repeatlessness. Repeatlessness. And the only place where repeating occurs is through the perception of our minds. But it's not true. It can't be. It's not physically possible. So the past and the future are inevitable, but the past and the future don't exist. And the only place that they are given birth is through our thinking mind. Now, my personal angle on mind control is that if you believe you are that automatic thinking voice, if you believe that that thinking thing, this mind, is who you are, well, then you are under mind control. Because as I was capable of going in and out of my body and playing around with that, which is all what meditation or prayer or any of those things are, really, it's about disassociating with this and raising your awareness up to a higher level. And when you do that, you realize that this conversation that's continuously happening, you can't stop it, you can't never turn it off. And then, as I say, you can unplug from it, but you can't unplug it. Because if they unplugged it, they would unplug you, and that's a subject for a whole other lecture. So, you've got this thinking mind. The only thing that really exists is right now. Evolution is happening right now. Even the Big Bang is happening right now. At the outer reaches of, we think about the Big Bang 100 million years ago or something happened like way over there. It's still happening now. At the furthest reaches of our universe, the Big Bang is happening right now, right now, right now, right now, right now, right now. Whole new universes are being created. Now, the reason I bring this up, it's so absolutely critical, is that, you know, in as far as mind control is concerned, it is dealing with parts of your brain that force you out of the present moment. It forces you into the future and into the past. And it divides you from the real core of who you are, what you are, and what is really perceiving. What is really listening to all of this information that's coming in through your senses. And fear, you know, I talk about fear quite a lot. And it used to be this, you know, the acronym FEAR, you know, false evidence appearing real. That's not, I don't like that one. I talked about it for a while, someone said that, and it never felt right. But really what fear is fantasized events appearing real. They're fantasized events. We leave this moment. We don't attend to really what's the repeatlessness of life. And we go out into this fantasized world. And that fantasized world begins to interact with what is our subconscious brain. And our subconscious brain cannot tell time. Our subconscious brain just responds to whatever thoughts that are occurring and creates chemical secretions that go into our body, where then we begin to have the fear response. We begin to have the fear feelings, which then perpetuates more of that fantasy. And it goes on and on and on. So how do we stop this thing? So before we go there, I want to talk about some of the power that your mind actually has. Because each one of us is tapping maybe 2%, maybe 1% of really the power of what our brains actually can do. And so I'll give you an example. In my studies, I came across a group of monks who live in the Himalayas, or the Himalayas. And these monks spend their entire life attempting to get to this highest teachings. There's a particular set of teachings that are considered the highest teachings. So their entire life is spent 30, 40 years trying to get to this one test. And if they can pass this one test, then they can get the highest teachings. So after they've spent their entire life trying to get to this final test so they can get to the highest teaching of their particular, you know, faith and their particular way of looking at the world, the test looks something like this. This group of monks is stripped of their clothing and given a wool blanket. They're led out of the monastery in the wintertime, up the mountain to where the snow line is, and they take their blankets off and sit in the snow, and then a hole is punched in the river, in the ice, and each one of their blankets is dipped into that freezing cold water. It is then brought back to the monk who is sitting in the snow, wrapped around the monk. And the monk's job, his test, is to use his mind to heat his body to the point whereby he can dry the blanket. But not only once, 7 times. So the test begins at sunset, and by sunrise, dip, dry, focus, dip, dry, focus, dip, dry, focus, dip, drip, focus, dry, dip, 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 focus, dry, and one more time, dip, focus, dry. Clearly these guys have got a handle on something. Astronauts control somewhere between 12 and 15 bodily functions. Their oxygen absorption, their respiration, their heart rate, their digestion, with their minds. So if they can do it, can anyone do it? Absolutely. But what is it that they're using that allows them to do that? And the key element in that idea is the idea of focus and the idea of attention. Now, one of the laws that I subscribe to concerning the human mind is what I call the law of consciousness. Okay, what is consciousness? Just real quickly defining what consciousness is. Consciousness is the awareness of being aware. Okay, so you are aware that you're aware. And then we're going to use that as the definition of consciousness. Okay, that you're aware that you're not your sense of smell, your eyes, your thoughts, you're not any of those types of things. You're not even your thoughts, but you're this thing that is observing all of that. Okay, and every now and then we get glimpses of that, and it might be some traumatic event where time slows down in a car accident, and all of a sudden we're like disassociated with this whole thing. We have these kind of out-of-body experiences. In fact, in 1973, a 280,000 person sample was taken, 90% of which had had some type of out-of-body awareness experience like that. 90% of us had had some type of experience like that. And out of the 90%, 85% never wanted to have that experience again. And I submit the reason they didn't want to have that experience again is because we never had a framework to talk about it. Because when you start talking about the mind and you talking about the spirit, and then, there's certain religious beliefs that say, well, that's the devil, or that's the this, and that's the that. And in my opinion, in regards to Christianity, and in regards to specifically the idea of Satan and evil, the only place, the only doorway for any of that energy, that thought, whatever you want to call that negativity, the only place where that can even begin to get into this reality is through your thinking mind. If you subscribe to that concept, that religion, you subscribe to those thoughts, we are made in the image and likeness of God. So everything that is beautiful, everything that is magnanimous, everything that is the quintessential expression of the beauty, of the harmony of everything is who we are. And everything else that we don't like about this world, everything that is satanic, everything that is evil, everything that is awful, everything, all of that was created by a thinking mind. So, when we can get a handle on this thinking mind, we can close that doorway. Put up a stop sign, say something. Sorry. My experience that life is closed. So now we talk about the law of consciousness, and we're saying being aware of aware, and what have you. And the law of consciousness is that which we pay attention to, we become aware of. What you pay attention to, you become aware of. Now, that's like the law of gravity. It's happening. Whether you're aware of it or not, whether you're actually attending to it or not, that is how your mind is working. What you pay attention to, you become aware of. So, someone who's a shoe salesman goes through their life noticing everyone's shoes, a hairdresser, everyone's hair, car salesman, everyone's car, real estate guy, all people's houses. Someone who's focused on love, what do you suppose they see? Someone who's focused on fear and being defensive, what do you think they see? This isn't my idea. This is just how the brain works. Now you have a choice in this matter with your attention. Now I'd like to use an analogy for what our attention is. And our attention really is like this unmanned fire hose. You turn that water on and that fire hose is just and just going everywhere it wants to go and just flying everywhere, and you wake up in the morning, it's like ringing the alarm, it's like, oh gosh, it's 6 o'clock already. Oh, is that coffee I smell? Oh, my body's a little stiff. Oh God, I got to pick up the laundry today. Oh, I got that presentation, and oh, that's that coffee. Oh, maybe 5 more minutes, and on and on and on, being dragged from sensory perception to thought to reality to not reality to desire, and we're just constantly being dragged around by this hose. And what these yogis, what the astronauts are able to do is able to grab on to that hose and focus it like a laser beam exactly where they want it. Yet how many of us are really taking the opportunity and the time or really even know how to do that? I submit that you've been purposefully led away from that. And that the distractions of your life, what you've been caused to want, what you've been caused to desire, what you've been caused to see as important, are all the aspects of mind control running your life. Excuse me. So where do you go from there? We've got information. If mind control is anything, in my opinion, it is spiritual warfare. Not religious warfare. Spiritual warfare. With the corporatocracy that is controlling the entire world, we have gotten to a point where we measure our self-worth and our standing in life by the things that we consume, own, occupy, or have. That's who we believe we are, our things. And the truth of the matter is, clearly we're not. And it's absolutely critical that we begin to shift our consciousness in regards to that. Now, one of the things that happened over the evolution that we're having right now, but in this thing called the past, as we have evolved here, our brains used to be only 3 pounds, and now they're up to 30 pounds in some human beings. Not only did we gain mass, but we gained functionality. And one of the functions that came with this evolution of the brain as it grew inside this human skull was something that's called the prefrontal cortex. Okay? The prefrontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex. And its job is to be a life simulator. Okay? It's to predict the future. And so to give you, we'll do a little experiment right now so you can experience your prefrontal lobe. Right? So, here's your prefrontal lobe. Let's pretend, okay, we are in a meeting today for Joe's Ice Cream Company, for peace. Okay, we got peace cream. That's what we're here for. This is the first peace cream meeting, and we're having this new ice cream company for generating peace on the planet. Right? And again, so here's our board meeting. We're all in here, and I'm presenting to you today my recipes for the various flavors. And the very first flavor that I've come up with, I think it's going to be huge, guys. Wait. Okay, I'll share it with you because I'm very excited. The very first flavor, I think, should be chicken ice cream. Doesn't that sound great? Oh, and then my next one is liver ice cream. Yeah. Now, what just happened, and what made you laugh, was that your prefrontal lobe made an association with the past of this data that it has in what I call your typewriter list, and it said, no, not a good idea, projected out into the future, the people aren't going to like that, not a good idea, and you just experienced your prefrontal lobe. Now, this prefrontal lobe was very useful when we were trying not to be eaten by by tigers and lions and snakes, and trying to figure out how to stay warm in the cave, and we're in survival mode, and it's been very useful for our evolution. But now we're no longer in that quote-unquote survival mode. And so what happens is that our prefrontal lobe manufactures adversaries. Illusory adversaries. Now, many of these adversaries are actually put in there. Many of these adversaries, as we know, Osama and 9/11, it just goes on and on and on. We could list them, and then we could spend an hour here just listing all of these quote-unquote adversaries that we need to be fearful of, whether it was the commies or it's the this or that, Now, one of the things that happened in the last workshop, last lecture, was I had a volunteer come up and we did an exercise where we did kinesiology, and we looked at kinesiology muscle testing. right? And we had someone standing here, and I had them think, I tested their arm for how strong they were. They tried pushing it down. And then I had them think negative thoughts. And I was pushing with my whole hand when I tested them. I had them think negative thoughts about themselves. Oh, I'm useless, I'm a waste of time, I'm a piece of shit, why do I even do that? All this kind of stuff. And with one finger, I was able to push their arm down. Now, I had them start thinking positive thoughts. Right? I had them thinking about all of these, I'm so great and I'm so beautiful, I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm just a loving and beautiful person, and just really pumping it up with gusto and what have you, and I couldn't push their arm down for nothing. So then, we switched it up, and I said, okay, now what I want you to do is, and I asked them to keep these thoughts to themselves, but to think as many negative thoughts about me as they possibly could. And sure enough, he started projecting all this negative thoughts, all these negative hates, all this kind of stuff, and went down. Then I had him say as many positive thoughts as he could about me, and arm once again was rigid and solid. Try this with your friends. Try this with everyone you know. Go watch the video and see it, and then actually do it, because I do this with every single human being in my life. There's no one in my life that we haven't done the arm testing with. Because this is a very important piece. A very important piece in you taking control of your mind and taking control of your life. Because what that experiment exhibited was that regardless of the target of your negativity, whether it was yourself or someone else, the person who is depleted is you. So you might be thinking that you're sending all the negative death rays in your mind to the human being, but the person is actually being the person that's actually being depleted is you. Now I love what Alex Jones is doing as far as informing people about what's going on. When I first started getting into this whole movement was back in 1983 when I began to find out about nuclear power and the reality of nuclear power. And I personally have taken on the NRC, and I closed the nuclear power plant by myself in 1987, Clinton nuclear power plant. And I was fighting these guys in debates, and I was experiencing their mind control. And I would diffuse their mind control with the audience, because I'd be out there doing the debate, and I'm going to, and I had all the facts, and I had all the figures, and I had all the stuff, and then these guys would come up, and everything I said basically was useless. And so then, every time I'd do a debate, I'd say, can I go first? And they're like, yeah, go ahead, And so I'd go first, and I'd say to my audience, I'd say, okay, guys, I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of information that I just found out about this nuclear power plant and nuclear power in general. And all of it is factual. You can look it up yourself. And now you need to understand, though, that when I'm done talking, we have some very highly trained professionals that all they are trained to do is to take everything I say, turn it all around, and make me look like an idiot, and I have no reason for concern whatsoever. And what that did was that when they would get up, then everybody was like, And they were looking for it. And as a result, they didn't have control over those audiences, and as a result, in less than a year and a half, we closed the power plant. And I share that not just because it's a cool story, but I share that because when I first got involved in the movement, and that's a long time ago, 1983. When I first got involved, and I realized that I had been betrayed, I'd been lied to, I'd been manipulated, and I was fucking pissed off. I was enraged, my entire being, that not only myself, but every other human being that I knew was being manipulated and controlled and lied to in this way, and that my life somehow was this expendable piece of crap that they could decide to do whatever they wanted to and send me off to war or just poison me, who cares? And I was really mad. So then I would spend years looking for more information, more stuff to uncover more of the lies and more of the tales and more of all of the mind control and more and more and more and more and more, just to feed this sense of rage. only to realize after doing my research on the mind that what I had been doing the entire time, even though I had been effective in many different ways, that I was playing into one of the main concepts of mind control. They want us to be angry. They want us to be pissed off. They want us to be enraged. They want us to act out in a violent way because we're depleting ourselves. Now, underneath all of that rage, when you tap into that, it's very powerful. But what's underneath that rage is your personal power. But what we've been doing, what we've been taught, what we've been led to do with that personal power is spill it out. Give it away. Dissipate it. By expressing ourselves in these rageful ways, by filling ourselves with hate and anger, and by essentially just giving away our birthright. Because when you can harness that personal power, you then begin to have the ability to control that fire hose. So it's just not flipping around and being dragged over and all around and in circles and all this other kind of stuff. So please think about that. Please think about what energies you're carrying, what energies you think you're putting out. You know, people, after I've done lectures like this in various crowds and, you know, within the Patriot movement or various survivalists and various, you know, different kind of groups like that, they're, oh, well, you're just a spiritual kind of guy. You know? And it's like, well, yeah. But and that somehow diminishes my fight against this system? One of my role models is you know, Gandhi. Many of us have read and studied the life of Gandhi and what have you, but the key element in Gandhi was the idea that, you know, satyagraha, and that peaceful non-compliance. But the peaceful aspect was really critical. And the way he did it, basically, is he just realized that, you know, the British are not, they're going to leave. This is done. This can't be sustained. This is ridiculous. And so without anger, without hatred, without violence, without all that crap that disempowers you, he just simply said, no, you know what? Someday, and very soon, they're going to go. And when they go, they're going to leave as friends. And people are saying, friends? Oh, they can't be his friends. Look what they've done to us for all these years and stuff like that. And there's all these different types of riots that were coming. And that's where he would begin to fast and say, listen, you know, if you want me to lead this thing and you want to really get this done, it's got to be peaceful and that's it. And I'm just going to, you know, kill myself if you don't do it. I mean, it was kind of a way, but he got people's attention to realize the folly. You know, and there was one time when there was this big, I mean, the entire nation was supposed to hit the streets and they were not going to go to work and not work in the mills and not do anything. The entire country was going to go on strike and some violence was breaking out in one region. And Gandhi said, okay, we're calling it off. We can't have any violence. And one of his kind of, you know, helpers, lieutenant kind of people, you know, came up to him and said, you know, Gandhiji, I mean, you can't call it off. I mean, it's the entire nation. You know, as a leader, you have to show some form of consistency in your leadership. And he looked at him, he says, my commitment is to truth, not consistency. And since my understanding of truth changes from moment to moment, so too will my consistency. So we've got this mind, this thing that is just going off and just flying around and what have you. And I have this little analogy that I like to use to kind of explain the separation between the mind and its abilities and then this chug-along reality called life. Now our ability to conceptualize like an idea, like a new business, right? Or you got a t-shirt idea. And it just takes nanoseconds. Boom, you can see it. You can see how it can be distributed and all this other kind of stuff. And then it takes literally trillions of times longer for that to actually manifest in this chug-along reality. So our ability of our mind, I like to liken it as like the speed of a fighter jet that can fly at thousands of miles an hour. And that the chug-along reality, our physical bodies and like that, are that of like the speed of a car. And so we've got this mind that can just like, whoo, and then when it actually manifests here in this reality, it's like this slow car. So how do you keep these two things together when they're traveling at two different speeds? So imagine if you had this car and this airplane in Los Angeles, and you were going to have them go to New York. And they were going to leave at the same time. How would you get these two vehicles to arrive, to leave LA at the same time and arrive in New York at the same time? Because if you try and speed up the car to the speed of the airplane, surely it's going to lose control and crash. If you try to slow the airplane down to the speed of the car, it's going to lose it and it's going to crash. So how do you get these two things that are operating at completely different speeds to leave from the same place and to end at the same place at the same time? The answer the answer is to have the car be driving at its safest maximum speed, and at the same time have the airplane circling around it, constantly keeping in relationship as they travel through time and space. Now I'm out of the camera, sorry. Now this is your mind, this is your life, this is your experience. You come into this world alone, and you're going to leave it alone. I've been given the grace, the blessings, to be able to exit this experience and come back. And if there's ever anything you do alone, I guarantee you that that is one thing that you do all by yourself. And the reality is that your entire life you're doing all by yourself. But where is your consciousness? It's based in what you are paying attention to. And what you're paying attention to, you're becoming aware of. And what you're becoming aware of is fueling fear, fueling, more often than not, unconscious activity, where you're just surviving. And this hose is dragging you around, taking you from one subject, one topic to another, just trying to go around, as opposed to actually now taking control of your life. No one's going to give it to you. No one's going to provide it. You have to take it. Now there's a million ways to do it. For me, it's been through meditation, through playing music, through doing different types of things, staying very present in the moment. It's so crazy because I have just so much information and I just want to share it all. And if there's anywhere I get stuck in my life is like I just want everyone to get it, and I just want so badly for other people to really just understand that everything that is the most powerful beauty experience of life is who you are, and we just get busy thinking we're not. Because we actually believe we are our thoughts. We actually believe we are that thinking thing. I want to talk about stress. Because there's things that, as we begin to unravel the various levels of how mind control is used. What I'm attempting to do is I'm trying to show you the mechanisms that are being influenced, so that when you become aware or begin to attend to those mechanisms, you can then become aware of how they're being influenced. And when you become aware of how they're being influenced, you can then change your response to, instead of reacting to your world, responding to your world. Giving you some spaciousness inside this thing called the brain and this rapid fire thinking that's going on. So stress. Okay? There are 3 levels of stress that we'll talk about on this lecture. And just very quickly, if this, I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you guys, and just thank you so much for listening and participating in this conversation. And if at any time you have a question or want some clarity, please put your hand up, ask a question. But you can get all of this stuff. I have a weekly radio show every Monday from 11 till 1 on Co-Creator Radio Network, where this is all we talk about. And we talk about it worldwide, thousands of listeners. I get people from Japan, from Uruguay, from Brazil, from Netherlands, all participating in this conversation worldwide. If you want to participate in or just listen to it, all the archives are there at my website. You can listen to them. It's very cool stuff. And I've got lots of lectures and lots of things that you can watch that'll get you up to speed with all of this information. Because we haven't even touched on the quantum physics of it all. And when you get into that level of it, you really wonder if you even have a personality, if you even have a person. Because it all breaks down into particles, and it's like, what's the purpose of the, what's the function of the purpose-driven photon? Because it's never mind. That's an inside joke for quantum physicists. So stress. Okay. What we normally call stress. Okay, like when we feel it in our body and we're kind of hot, or we got tension in our neck or our throat, or we're feeling somewhere, and what we identify as stress is actually the second level of stress. There's a step before that physical ramification, and then a step thereafter. Now, the first level of stress is what we call the walk-away response. Okay, so let's say you're in the grocery store, you're going down the aisle, you see some couple fighting over there, and you just kind of walk away. Right? You can feel that energy, you don't want to be involved in that energy, you can sense it, and it's just like, and it's called the walk-away response. You see animals do it all the time. A dog's sitting there and something happens, they just get up and walk away. Deer do it before they're going to have birth. They're trying to find that safe place, and if they just walk away. Now, we were not allowed that level of reality as we were growing up. Your parents are pissed off at you, or somebody's mad at you. Were you allowed to just walk away? I don't think so. I wasn't. So what happens is that we suppress that level of stress. And then that elevates the level of stress to what is most commonly known as what we call the fight or flight. Now it's not just walk away. Now it's, I got to get away from this, or I got to make it stop. But would you lose your job if you dealt with it, your boss that way? Probably. Did your teachers allow you to do that? Did your parents allow you to express that? No. So once again, now the second level of stress is being suppressed, which then elevates us to the third level of stress. And the third level of stress is unconsciousness. And unconsciousness is the mother of all addiction and the father of all suicide. After we have suppressed our walk away, after we have suppressed our fight and flight, what do we end up doing? We have to find some virtual way to cope with the amount of stress that is in our bodies, which leads us to these unconscious activities, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, pornography, rageaholic. So how do we deal with stress? Because part of that polarization that is occurring, the polarization that's you're Republican or Democrat or you're a patriot or you're a this or you're a that or you're an atheist or you're a Christian or you're a Muslim or you're a Krishna or a Hindu or a Buddhist or all the division and all of that. All of that polarization. And you trying to convince the other side that they're wrong and you're right. All of that is just a bunch of biochemistry that's flying around, a bunch of neurons that are flying around. It has absolutely nothing to do with being here and now in the repeatless moment. It exists only in the mind. And it is perpetrated to get you out of this moment where you are aligned as the Aboriginal people were in what we call the ecocentric reality. You have the ecocentric reality, you have the anthropocentric reality. The anthropocentric reality is the concept that man is over nature, that nature is there for man to manipulate and control for his well-being and his good. Do we see that anywhere on the planet today? You know? As opposed to the ecocentric reality, which is the very fact that every cell in your body, everything that exists, is nature. You are nature. There is no separation between you and that which is the nature. That what you do to that out there is doing to yourself, because you are not separate from it. And so in removing oneself from these polarizations and working towards unification and the understanding of the oneness of the being that is here. Extracting oneself from these polarities, grabbing hold of that fire hose, keeping your mind circling around this chug-along reality and keeping focused on the fact that we are all here to generate peace and love and happiness. That's why we're here. Not to conquer each other and control the environment and control the ecology and control each other and manipulate each other. That's not what I'm here for. It's what I thought I was here for. Thought I was here for. It's what I was trained. It's what I was told. Now all of that exists. Every aspect of that, I think this is going to get a little trippy. You got two halves of your brain. Okay, you got the left side. Yep, right. Okay, sometimes you got the left side and you got the right side. And it's like, oops. I had to check. Sorry. So you got the left side and you got the right side. Okay? And the left side is what's called a serial processor. And the right side is called a parallel processor. Two halves work completely different. Okay? Now, the serial processor is the linear thinking. 1, 2, 3, 4, step by step, and bringing things in series, in a sequence, till you come to logical understandings. Now, the right hemisphere of the brain is what is called a parallel processor. And the right hemisphere of the brain doesn't work that way. It just randomly grabs from here and there, and everything is just one, and it's just this big soup and all this other kind of stuff. And it is through the right hemisphere of the brain that you begin to, if you could separate, there's a brain scientist, and I can't remember her name, who had a stroke. And she actually had her brain separated. Her left brain was turned off, and she was left only in her right brain. And left in her, when her left brain was, when that serial processing was no longer able to work, and she was just left there observing the world from her right side of her brain, she couldn't tell the difference between her body and physical reality, and so everything was all this big mush, and the energy and the being that she was so expansive that you could never even imagine how she could get that expansiveness back into this tiny little body. But that through her right brain, she saw no separation between any of us. She went into that quantum reality of being able to see the particles and the physics and everything that we are. And it is through that right hemisphere that we begin to realize our folly of the left hemisphere. Now it just so happens that the right hemisphere happens to be the creative center. Right? And isn't it interesting that over the last 60 years, over 130 different educational systems, 130 educational systems across different cultures and different countries, all of them have reduced by as much as 95% all creative thinking, all creative ideas, all artistic movements, any type of art classes, poetry, music, dance, anything that had anything to do to stimulate the right hemisphere of the brain. Why do you suppose that happened? I submit it was intentional. Mm-hmm. I submit that it was to disconnect you from yourself, to pull you as far away from the moment, to pull you as far away from your own personal point of view. And I share that solely so that you can begin to contemplate the idea that when you are living in the here and now, when you're actually aware of that, when you employ the law of consciousness and you are attending to the very moment as completely fresh and new, you begin to realize that life is an entire improvisation. There's no such thing as fear. And that you actually are creating the meaning. This moment right now has absolutely no meaning. If we were not thinking, there would be no meaning right now. But we generate the meaning. And we impose that meaning. And we impose with that prefrontal lobe. Remember we talked about this simulator. And if there's any hurt and there's any pain and there's anything that's unresolved from your childhood, your mind is out there trying to avoid it every possible way. You have some moment where your sense of belonging was broken as a child. Generally, between the ages of 1 and 5, you had an experience where your sense of belonging to the family, to the group, to something was severed. In my own case, I was 2.5 years old. I remember it. My dad used to joke with us when we were being silly and we were being crazy. He'd say, you're off your rocker, right? And that was his way of acknowledging that we're being silly and goofy. You're off your rocker, kid, you know. And so, I was that young, and my dad was doing something silly, and I look at him and I say, "You're off your rocket." And he thought that was hilarious because I didn't say rocker, I said rocket. So I've got a big family. I'm the baby of the family, right? My sister's 13 years older than me. There's 6 kids. I'm this little kid, never have a voice in the family. And here's my opportunity. My dad says, "Joey, come here." Grabs me, puts me on the rocking chair, and he says, "Joey, I'm going to get everybody. You stay there. Say it again when I come back." And he runs and he gets everybody, and everybody's looking up, and I'm looking up at everybody, and the whole family's there. And here's my moment to say, yes, I'm going to belong. And Dad says, "Say it, Joey, say it." And I say, "You're off your," and I don't know why I did this. But I said, "You're off your rocker." And everybody's like, "Oh, that's good." And they go, "Rocket, rocket." And they're like, "Yeah, that's funny, Joey," you know. And in that moment, my sense of belonging was broken. In that moment, my sense of being able to be part of this family unit was broken. Now what happened is that this prefrontal lobe, as a survival mechanism to protect me, decided that it was going to avoid any other possible situation where I would ever feel that way again. That I never wanted, it felt so awful. I felt so isolated, so alone. And the survival mechanism, it's not anything you can necessarily choose to happen. This happened to every single human being. There's not a human being on the planet that this doesn't happen to. It's part of the evolution of your brain. It's part of the evolution of your psychology, of all your belief systems, of everything that is controlling your life today happens as a result of that sense of belonging being broken. It is what is known as an inciting incident in the primary development of your personality. So each one of us, well, I'll just stay with myself. So for myself, this awful feeling of having the sense of belonging broken, I don't want to feel this way again. It feels awful. I'm isolated. I'm all alone. It's just, And so my mind then begins to develop what, in one technology, they call the winning formula. Okay? And the winning formula is how I'm going to avoid this for the rest of my life. So I've got this prefrontal lobe that is now actually out there looking for anything that resembles anything that could be causing me to ever feel separated like that again. And my entire life is driven by this thing that is attempting to avoid stuff. My entire life is driven as an avoidance mechanism. And I submit to you that every single one of us has that going on. You cannot bypass it. It's just part of how your brain develops. Now, as a result of understanding that, I realized, wow, that's fucked. I don't like that. That's not cool at all. that instead of being able to be here in the present moment where everything is fresh and new, and being able to embrace life, and embrace people, and embrace love, and embrace growth, and embrace humanity, embrace the unity that we all are, I'm sitting here trying to avoid pain, trying to not take responsibility for stuff. And I do this in my workshop, but I'll give it to you right now. You want to identify what your winning formula is? I'll just give it to you, because I'll throw it out there and you can play with it, and you want to come back to me about it, we can go into depth. I mean, we spent 2 days on just this one thing that I'm going to give to you right now. But the way you can identify what your quote-unquote avoidance mechanism is make a list of all the ways that you can be counted on for. All the ways that people in your reality perceive you as being counted on for myself. To give you the relationship to what happened to me, my sense of belonging was broken because I didn't in that moment say the right thing. So you can sure as hell be sure that when you're around Joe, he is going to say the right thing all the time. He is going to make sure that you understand everything that he's saying. He's going to make sure that he says it just perfectly, and he's going to be the life of the party, and we're going to be happy, and everything's going to be... And he's going to avoid any possibility of that sense of belonging being broken by saying the wrong thing. So if you want to begin examining these types of things, have a look at that list. Now, it's not a bad thing that I happen to be able to, be pretty gregarious and say the right thing and all that. That's not a bad thing, but where is it coming from? Is it coming from a place of avoiding everything? And if I start seeing something develop, make sure I make those phone calls so it doesn't go in the wrong direction, so that I'm not to blame for something, and I try to see this is going on over there, and I'm manipulating my entire world. So, it's kind of heavy, So before the night's over, because I could go on and on and on about these types of things, I guess what's most important for me to communicate to you is that it's really important that those of us who are aware of the truth begin extracting ourselves from the violent aspect of our expression of our hatred about what is going on. It is one thing to recognize it, to know the truth. It is another thing to let it control you and to let it polarize you in such a way that you are depleting yourself. I can't be any more plain than that. Apparently I died in order to give you that. Please contemplate that. That regardless of the target of your thinking, if it's negative, if it's hateful, if it's anything, the person that's being depleted is you. Look at all of the polarization that's going on. My current joke is, I love it because it's like, when when W took office, one of the first things, if you remember, he said is, I'm a uniter, not a divider. Right? And lo and behold, it's true. He has done more to unite humanity than any other human being on the planet, It's a little twisted, but hey, I'll take it, Ay. You know, I'm not here to sell books, but a lot of this information is in my book. A lot of the information, half of the book is exercises on how to grab a hold of that fire hose. How to turn your every moment into a conscious activity. A couple things that I want to teach you today, just real quick, because I want to leave you with some skills. Okay? First thing is, if you begin to catch yourself in stress, by the time you hit the second stage and you feel it in your body, adrenaline's pumping through your body. Okay? When you've suppressed the walk-away response, and you then have activated the fight and flight response, you have then adrenaline pumping through your body, and you're already lost in it. Okay? Now, one of the key elements that happens when you're in the fight and flight second level of stress activity, your breathing pattern changes. And you begin what's known as chest breathing. Now, that chest breathing actually stimulates the thymus, which stimulates all these other types of things, which actually perpetuates more adrenaline being pumped into your system and actually activates the fight and flight response. So I cannot communicate to you enough the importance of belly breathing. Actively pursuing breathing into the entire chest cavity of your body. Especially when you're feeling angst or anger or something going on, watching TV or some news story or some other thing that you've gotten. Keep yourself here. That's what aloha means. It means belly breathers. And they're always like, shaka, you know, relax. I lived in Hawaii for quite some time. But I want to teach you something right now about your mind. And this particular research actually ultimately kind of became, it evolved into what is known as neuro-linguistic programming. You guys may have heard of that, NLP. But I'm not going to talk about NLP. I'm going to talk about the research that actually was the birthing place of NLP. And what researchers were finding was that depending on what type of memory that you're entertaining, what type of, you know, wherever you're gaining access in your brain, in your mind, what the information that you're trying to gather, it comes from different areas. And when you are accessing that information, your eyes actually will look in different places, different fields within its you know, visual field. So when you're remembering a smell, you'll look up and to the left. When you're remembering something that someone said, you look down and to the right. And when you remember, and so this is how police and interrogators can tell if you're telling the truth or not, because they'll ask you very specific questions. They'll ask you a question to give them information, and they'll see where you're gaining access from it. Or they'll ask you information about a particular shape or a picture that they want you to do, and they'll see if you're making it up or if you're actually recalling a picture, and they can tell. I mean, this has been used for years. So the point is, while our fire hose is going like this and doing all of this and just dragging us around, how do we still that mind? How do we get it out of accessing information and projecting and pushing forward and what have you? So I'd like everyone just to put your feet on the ground for just a second. Because the way you slow this thing down and the way you begin to generate and emanate that peaceful state where that mind's not dragging you around is to learn an exercise that is called the soft gaze. I call it the vision meditation in my book. By holding your eyes still and not allowing them to move around, you actually slow the brain down. But there's a very specific way in which you do this. Okay? Your eyes are little cameras. Right? And those little cameras are shooting out like this. And they're picking up light that's coming inside. Then 120 times per second, your brain is going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between each eye like that. And then it's building this holographic image inside your brain. You actually think you're looking out here, but actually you're seeing everything in there, right? You don't see anything out here. You see it all inside with this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So this exercise is to teach you how to see what the cameras are seeing, not what you're looking at.
Say that a different way.
You have a screen inside your head. I say, okay, everybody, see a pink elephant. Now you're looking at me, but you can see a pink elephant. See a baseball bat. You're looking at me, you can see a baseball bat. What the hell's that all about? So you got this screen inside your head that these two cameras are projecting on side of, and what you are looking at is the screen, not what your eyes are seeing. What you see is what you look at on the screen, not necessarily what the cameras are seeing. So we're going to learn today to look at the information that is coming through the cameras. And as a result of doing this particular exercise, you can reduce the 50,000 self-talks that are happening down to virtually nothing. Slow it down to a degree where then you can begin to really observe yourself in a new way. So it's very simple. It's no oogly ogly, no mystics, nothing. This is very scientific, and so just relax, okay? All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to just gaze forward. You can do this while you're driving. You can do this while you're sitting at home. You can do this anywhere. Gaze forward and just kind of look forward. Don't look at any one thing in particular, but just kind of gaze your eyes forward. Now, without moving your eyeballs, so just keep your gaze looking forward. See everything that's above you. So you're still looking forward, but now you can see everything that's above you. You can blink if you have to. If your eyes get a little dry, that's okay. Now, without moving your eyes, you're gazing forward. See everything that's above you and see everything that's below you. Notice how your mind is quieting. Notice how there's a stillness that's pervading your being. The chatter is reducing. And at the same time, now see everything left and right. So that you see everything that's above you, everything that's aside of you, everything that's below you, all at the same time. You're not looking at any one thing, but you see it all. And as you sit in this space, you begin to see that the three-dimensionality becomes two-dimensional. And you begin to see the screen, kind of just this, it looks like there's a flat wall in front of you. And as you sit with that longer and longer, actually the colors begin to blend. You begin to actually see the radionic field of each being, what someone might call the aura. It's measurable. And your eyes are seeing much more than what you are looking at. All of these things that we talk about, radionic fields and auras and transmitter vibes and all these different types of things, the reason they came to be known, is that the yogis and all these people had seen them for all these years, and we finally created equipment sophisticated enough to prove it existed, but it always was there anyways. So just sitting like this, when you find that you are upset, you find that something has gotten you, you simply just gaze forward like this, breathe into your belly, and you feel it. It's just a sense of calm, a sense of stillness. It's no big deal. But you begin to experience the present moment and the repeatlessness. You get to experience God. I have no problem talking about God. The word God, you can call it Ram, you can call it whatever. You know, but God is only experienced in the present moment. You don't experience God in the future. You don't experience God in the past. The only place where you experience God is to get to that still place. And if you are not here, in this still place, then your mind has you. And if your mind has you, then most likely you are under mind control of some sort. So I offer that exercise. You can relax out of it if you like right now. But this is where we're headed now, guys. The evolution of consciousness is getting beyond the mind. If we are to be successful in transforming this world into the world that we want it to be, we cannot do it from that depleted state. We cannot do it from that anger state. We cannot do it from this opposition. I guess the only ways that we can really look at it is that that you got two choices. You can be part of the polarization or part of the unification. And I was part of the polarization. And I was feeding into the machine. I was feeding into what they needed me to be so that I was a depleted warrior. And I choose now to extract myself from that, knowing better. You know? Knowing better. Because, I mean, if we don't have peace with inside ourselves, and we don't have peace with our spouse or our kids or our neighbors, how the hell are we going to have peace on the planet? You know, it's not going to happen. So beginning the process of learning that your mind has been this thing that's been dragging you around like this fire hose and it's been out of control, and finding ways to still it, finding ways to begin to observe it, spending your time in the law of consciousness, where that which you pay attention to you become aware of, keeping that mind, your airplane, circling around the car and focusing and working with it. I do a whole series of different types of affirmations. I have products up to yin-yang on how to work with your programming in your brain and how to begin to reprogram it. And it's one more thing I shared at the last lecture, but I'll share it again this time. How many people here do any type of affirmations? Okay, that's great. Last time there was 2 people who raised their hands, so amen. Now, in my own research, and part of my PhD, was really discovering what that is all about. I mean, how does one reprogram themselves? And, you know, there was this big push in the 70s and the 80s, and Shakti Gawain and all these people with affirmations, and we would sit there and we'd go, you know, I am a beautiful and loving person, or I am this, and I am that, and I am that. And it got us going for a little while, but then it kind of fizzled out. And it's just like, well, oh well. You know, it's something we tried. You know, it felt good for a while, but it didn't stick. Why? Well, the reason why is that when you came into this world as these fresh little biocomputers, okay, your little computer here and your biological computer, you had just enough software to survive, to eat, to defecate, to breathe, and, you know, what have you. And then you begin to download programs. Download all different types of programs, download information and what have you. And one of the things that you're downloading is the perception of yourself, because for the first year and a half of your life, there is no I. You have no separate self-perception for the first 18 years of your life. You and your mom are this singularity, and every now and then the other blobs, your dad or your brother or something, you know, kind of take you away from that singularity, but there's no differentiation between you and yourself. Now, your entire identity began because of other people defining who you were. You know, oh, you're a cute little child, or boy, she doesn't like spinach, or he's so precocious, or why are you like that? And all of these things, and all these he, she, or you statements were being thrown at us for a year and a half, whereby then all of a sudden this magical thing happens when we begin to separate. And we begin to have this identity, but all of the identity is based on all these you, she, and he statements. That our identity was given to us by other people's observations, not by something that we created. We didn't even want it. We didn't ask for it. You know, we're just like cruising along, and all of a sudden, oh, I am this. I like this. I don't like that. And this whole thing is just like, boom, it just turns on one day, and all of it was given to you, was put in there. It was, it was forcefully downloaded. Yeah. And then they plugged you in, and all of a sudden, boom, I. So, in doing your affirmations, if you ever do them ever more, or you begin to work with them, whatever it is you want to reprogram in your brain, it is very important to do what I call the tri-voice technology. That you work in the first, second, and third person voices when doing your affirmations. So the example is, you know, I, Joe, am a loving and beautiful person. You, Joe, you're a loving and beautiful person. He, Joe, he's a loving and beautiful person. I, Joe, am a genius at whatever I do. You, Joe, you're a genius at whatever you do. He, Joe, he's a genius at whatever he does. Now, there are 11 levels of that. I'm sharing with you 3 of them today. There are 11 levels of that type of communication that has set up the programming for everything you believe you are. Not necessarily what you are, but what you believe you are. All of it was put in there. Every last bit of it. There's 11 levels at which to work with that. I've given you 3 of them. You had the aha experience with just 3. Imagine if you had all 11. There's one place you can get those. It's a good commercial, huh? No, but I'm trying to give real-world, tangible things that you can begin to do. So 1, we're talking about the belly breathing, relaxing yourself, getting yourself out of stress. When you recognize you're in that second level of stress, know that you are possibly, if you don't, 1, go burn that second level of adrenaline out by punching a bed or doing something, or just, just getting it out of yourself so that you actually burn it off. Realize that you are on your way to the 3rd level, which is unconsciousness, and most likely you're going to start doing some type of addictive behavior. Okay? So to bypass that, to not get into those stress levels, to not allow yourself to be elevated into those unconscious behaviors whereby they want you to be. Okay? They don't want you to be there.
Out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. To do the vision exercise, to begin doing affirmations, to begin working on reprogramming yourself, keeping that plane around your car, keeping it focused here and now, remembering repeatlessness, catching yourself when you're getting that angry towards someone else, when you're trying to convince someone they're wrong and you're right, you're depleting yourself. And to begin actively pursuing your life. You're not a victim here. You can be like those yogis. You can be like the astronauts. You got the tools. They're given to you. They're there. You just have to start using them. It's like you've been building a house all your life, trying to pound nails in with your hand, and all of a sudden someone shows you a hammer. It's like, holy shit, And you pick up the hammer and it makes it so much easier. Well, these are the same kind of tools. And there's thousands of them. I've spent 30 years studying every religious practice, every self-help program, every psychology, every philosophy that exists on the planet that I could find. Spent well over $350,000 attending every workshop, every lecture, everything that I could find about human consciousness. And I boiled it all down to my book. That's what it is. It's finding all the actual tools that you can work with, the actual tools that you can begin to facilitate these changes in your life. If you don't want to buy the book, okay, go ahead and watch my videos on the website and stuff like that. You'll start to glean some of it. But it's in there. I do workshops too, and we can get to that another time. But if there's any goal, my whole life, the only purpose I can find now for my existence is to uplift and nurture all life on the planet. I can't figure out any other reason to be here. And I want friends along the way. Come on. Join me. Come on.
And I guess the question I have is, what work do you do in terms of the 11 stages you were talking about? Can you give me some idea as to how it is that you were able to overcome this sense of limitation in your own life so that you could overcome any kind of emotional armoring or neurosis in your own character? Because I'm dealing with it a lot in mine.
We got a long conversation there.
3-day seminar.
Well, yeah, no, there's an entire process of what's called equilibrating. There's something called the quantum collapse. And I've taken some of the things that I have developed and something that John DeMartini has developed. If you're familiar with John DeMartini's work, Dr. John DeMartini. And essentially, when you get into the quantum physics of your brain, okay, you're dealing with particle physics. Everything that's happening within your brain is particles interacting, okay? And thoughts themselves are, in fact, particles. You can actually weigh a thought. A thought actually is a physical attribute, and when we get into I always get, talking about diet, Overthinkers Anonymous, sign me up. Lose some weight of these thoughts. But There is the level of statement of who you are. So you're declaring, I am this, he is that, she is that. There's the level of belief of who you are. I believe I am this, you believe you are that, he believes he is that. There is then the knowing of that. I know I am this, you know, he knows he is this, you know that you're this. And then there is the level of owning it and being it. Okay? So there are 4 different levels and 4 different levels of statements that you make in yourself, and each one is leading you to the ownership of that trait. Now there are 4,366 human traits as defined by the human language, by English language. A human trait would be defined as happy, sad, arrogant, mean, jealous, stupid, any one of those traits. Okay, there's 4,366 of them. All right? There's a handful of them that are controlling your life, probably anywhere between 20 and 50. And of those 20 and 50, you either hate them or you adore them. You either are resenting that trait and you're saying, you know, that person's just an arrogant son of a bitch. Now when you are doing that on a quantum level, what is happening is that you are giving rise to the existence of that by holding it to be true. In other words, when you are presenting and identifying that trait in another human being, there's 2 things that are happening. One, you're denying that you're capable of being that trait yourself. And so as a result of in that denial state, you are externalizing it and saying this other person is that. But as a result of that denial of being that way yourself and holding it out there, you are keeping it alive. And I'll give you a quick example of how this works. Okay? I've got my wife, and she's got someone at work who's literally just an apathetic, lazy asshole. Doesn't do any of his work. Okay? And so we said, okay, well, let's do a collapse on that. So what's the word that's bothering you? What's the trait that's really got you? Okay? And so this is what we do in my 2-day workshop, where you learn how to do this skill with every aspect of your life. You dissect your entire personality. You understand what it is, and you understand all the traits and things that are driving you. And this is what we do. And you learn how to do it. You never have to do it again. It's like riding a bike. You got it. So I sit with my wife and I said, okay, what's the traits that's bothering you? What's the thing that's really got that you've got to charge with? Because we put a charge to it. We give it some energy. And the charge that she came up with was apathetic. Okay, he's just apathetic. He doesn't want to do anything. Doesn't want to, you know what I mean? He's just lazy. I said, okay, so now, has anyone ever seen you as lazy in this world? She's like, well, okay. I said, so she lists them, and so we go through and we see all the people that have seen her as lazy in this world. So that she can identify and begin to equilibrate, because all of this is happening on a bio-neurological quantum level. In other words, everything that you don't like, these feelings that you're feeling in your body, are actually chemical sensations that are happening inside your system. And you literally can apply a specific series of thoughts that will send out chemicals from your brain to neutralize those yucky feelings, as I call them. That's a technical term. And when you've neutralized those yucky feelings, you then have the aha experience, and that charge no longer has you. So she has this yucky person, and they're lazy. I'll just use that word. They're lazy. Okay, has anyone ever seen you, honey, as lazy? And she goes, yes. Okay, who? And so she goes through and she pinpoints all the situations in her life where she's been seen as lazy. Okay, so now I say to you, how, honey, my wife, how is his being lazy a benefit or service to you? Precisely.
You know, it's like looking in the mirror.
And that was one of the things. So she was like, okay, well, you know, I'm projecting onto them, so it's giving me the opportunity to realize that. But, you know, when they're being lazy, it actually has promoted me in work, and people really look up to me, and people see me as a really positive person and someone who's take charge and what have you. And so she begins to examine it and begins to break into the realizing that his laziness is actually a really benefit and service to him, to her.
Yeah. Makes her look good.
Right.
By comparison.
Yeah, you know, precisely. And so then the next question is that if he was being the opposite way, how would that be a detraction from your life? Well, he wasn't doing that, then people wouldn't see me as this, and wouldn't know. And you keep going back and forth, and there's 14 different levels at which you go back and forth with that type of inquiry. And as a result of getting to that point, you realize that everything, all 4,366 traits, each one of us have it. The ones that you project onto others and say are awful about others, you're denying inside yourself. So that's the resentment side of it. Okay, that's the negative side of it. But there's also the positive side of it. And the positive side is what we call infatuation. Okay, and we get infatuated with these ideals of what we think are just so beautiful and what have you. You know, if I could only be like, well, not us, but some people that I work with, you know, they're infatuated with Donald Trump, and they wish they could have what he has, and what, you know, and they get this idealism of what it should be or what it could be. And what happens is when you do that positive infatuation, in order to lift that up, you have to put yourself down. You're saying that they're so great and they're that way, I can't be that way. If only I was that way, if only. And so in order to lift them up, so you have two sides of this coin. You have resentment, you have infatuation. And the goal in my work is to bring down all the infatuations, bring up all the resentments, have it all on a playing field that is equal, so that you're not resenting or infatuating with anything, and you're sitting in the middle, no longer affected and reacting to the world, and able to then peacefully and calmly love and experience the compassion of Christ and be that. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Whoa.
But that's...
Sounds pretty goddamn good. Well,
but I mean, what I'm getting at is that it's beyond just an exercise of reprogramming. It's a proactive realization of the charges that we add through language and labeling of people, places, and things as either good or bad. And through that process, we create a disequilibrium that's in our being, and that disequilibrium actually is not only an energetic one, like literally on a molecular magnetic level, it is also a biochemical one. And as a result of that biochemical disequilibrium that's in our body, we are then constantly trying to manipulate our reality so as to try and find some balance within that chemistry. And there are activities and exercises that you can do that where you are conscientiously looking into your world and interacting with it in such a way where you are continuously equilibrating that reality and that experience.
are you trying to eliminate comparing your life to anybody else? In other words, like the comparison that you just mentioned?
Yeah,
In terms of
ultimately.
ultimately.
Yeah. Ultimately. Because that's the ultimate in mind control. I mean, is that, I mean, one of the premises of mind control is that you are not enough. That who you are is not good enough. Who you are is not bright enough. Who you are is not enough. And so they impose all of these things that you should try to be. And as then you're trying to be them, you'll never be those because you can't be those because you're you. And therein lies the issue. You're trying to be something you could never be. You never develop who you are. Then you go to die and you realize who you are. And you realize you wasted all this time. How do you find your unique self? What's your purpose in life? I mean,
how is it that you can both achieve like the agents of your own ego, but yet not be dominated by it? I guess is what I.
Yeah. Well, the key element, I mean, and I talk about this in the book, and I talked about this in the last lecture, is that I liken the mind to a room. Okay, that your mind is like a room, and all this stuff that you've gotten that you're trying to organize right now are like all the furniture all just strewn all over the room. The couch is over here, the lamps there, and the plants are here, and there's wires over there. And in order to move around the room, you've got to like climb over all this stuff and around all these things and kind of get like that. And so these exercises, these mind exercises, and these awarenesses that you are adopting right now and experiencing are about cleaning up that room. Okay, are about organizing that furniture so that you can move around the room pretty easily without having to do all of that kind of stuff. You've got the room kind of cleaned and organized. Well, the problem is that that's where psychology stops. Psychology stops with just organizing the room, whereby then you don't even realize that outside the room exists. You're so busy organizing the room and cleaning it up that you don't even bother to open the windows or the doors and step outside.
You're rearranging the furniture on the deck of the Titanic.
Precisely. And mind control and all the consumerism and all the things you see, the political races and all that stuff is just throwing as much furniture as they can in that room and shaking it up so it never gets organized.
Why feel the need to organize? Isn't that part of the problem? In other words, the idea that you have to...
Well, it's easy. It's easy. Once it's organized, it's easier to move around the room, and the room is no longer irritating you. Yeah, ultimately. Mental feng shui, yeah. So the idea is, there's a certain level at which you organize the room so that then, because when the mind is agitated, it is impossible to get away from it.
Well, I was just merely asking, like, to what extent are we too attached to control, as a means of organizing all these so-called things? In other words, what's wrong with creating chaos?
I would say there's nothing wrong with it. I don't give it a charge, positive or negative. So, okay, listen, we could go on and on and on. I just, if there's anything I ever want anybody, just know that from now on, you and I and all of us are connected. From this moment forward, each one of us is a steward of love and light. And we're all working to evolve. And I'm just really grateful that I had the opportunity to see you all again. I didn't recognize you in these bodies. But, and, hopefully I'll come back again next month. Check out the website. There's a really cool website that's out there called iPeace. Have you guys come across iPeace? iPeace.me. It's iPeace.me. And it's people just like us from around the entire world all seeking ways to find peace. And it's not like Facebook, and it's not like that. It's pretty small still, but it's the intention. That is the intention. And the discussions there are very real discussions. It's a very cool place. If you haven't checked it out, it's fairly new. It's only a couple months old, but iPeace.me. www.ipeace.me. You can find me there. You can find my discussions and blogs there and what have you, some more videos. I got tons of videos on my website, in YouTube, wherever. Check them out if you want. Give me a call. My phone numbers are there. My phone number is really easy to remember. Now, is this divine providence or what? My phone number is 512-STAY-WELL. I didn't ask for it. It just turned out. 512-STAY-WELL. So I was like, oh, cool, thank you. So that's 782-9935. Anyway, so I'm going to hang around for a little while. I've got some of these things up here. Some, books are back there that, hang out. If you've never purchased books here before, really help them out. Check out what's going on here. And help to spread this word. I'd like to see more of us gathering in this room like this, and more of us coming together, and more of us trying to equilibrate, is the word, that rage and that anger and all of that stuff that has been driving us from that sense of betrayal. And to learn to transform and transmute that energy so that we can actually be the change that we want to see in the world. Which we all know who said that. So, as we be that change we want to see in the world, from this moment forward, you will not respond to your reality the same way you ever have. And we live in the repeatlessness moment, and it's been an honor and a real pleasure to be able to be of service to you. So thank you all.